Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. A little bit different today because instead of talking about books, this one is all about me. I recently hit 2,000 subscribers on the channel, which is absolutely amazing, and I gave you the opportunity to ask me questions for a Q&A session and you delivered. So today I'm going to go through the 70 or so questions that I've been asked. I'm going to try to answer all of them, but I won't be spending too much time on the majority just because of time constraints. And I'm also going to announce the winner of my book giveaway at the end of the video as well, so stay tuned for that. So first of all, before we get into the video, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has supported the channel since I started it up a little bit over a year ago. It's been absolutely fantastic interacting with everybody, making new friends, learning new things and finding out about new books and new authors, which is one of the key things that I was really looking forward to when I set up the channel in the first place. I said it in the video where I announced this one and announced the giveaway, but I'm absolutely astounded by the level of support that I've had from the community, not just the number of subscribers and followers on Twitter and Instagram, but also just general comments that I receive from people. It really warms my heart and I love this community for it. So I decided today that I would be in my normal filming location to do this Q&A. Normally for this kind of video I would sit at my computer, but it's not really set up for filming the background and things like that. It's just a complete mess in this room. Going forward, however, I hope that that's one of the things that I'll be able to change, because now the channel is growing and somehow, I still find this kind of difficult to believe, but somehow I'm making money through this, essentially this hobby of mine as well. One of my first priorities is to get myself a new camera that I can use to improve the quality of the videos that I'm putting out as well. One of the things I feel that I've been missing out on, other than through time zones, is live shows and collaborations with other YouTubers, because I film on my phone and I've not been able to get a decent setup with it to reliably and in good quality stream over the internet. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be actively looking for over the coming months, and that's all because of the support from you lovely people. So anyway, that's enough of me rambling. Let's hit the intro card and then we'll have some questions. So I've got these questions all printed out in front of me, so I'm going to be looking down occasionally. I would normally do my best to edit that kind of thing out and make the video as smooth as possible, but I'm not going to in this one because that would just be absolutely far too much. People ask me questions in YouTube comments and on Twitter, but most of these were taken from my Discord server, and I'm going to go through them in kind of that order. So the YouTube questions first, then the Twitter questions, and then the Discord questions. So there will occasionally be one person asking several questions in one go because these are not shuffled in any way. There's a couple of questions that are quite similar as well, but I'll approach those as I get to them. And just lastly, before I get into the first question, I apologise in advance for any mispronunciations of people's names. I am very sorry for that. And also, several of the people who ask me questions do have their own YouTube channels. I won't highlight that in the video, but I'll include a link to their channels in the description box below this one. So do go and check them out, because I subscribe to all of these and I really appreciate the content that they put out. Anyway, that's it. On with the questions. First one is from Joshua Cornelison, who says, do I have a personal faith or religion, and what is it? How does it influence my reading of fantasy? So this one's a really easy one for me to answer, because no, I don't. I'm not a religious person whatsoever, and that doesn't affect my reading of fantasy at all. Tufty McTavish then asks several questions, starting with, how do I like to manage critical comments for books where I interact with the author on socials? So this one is, I think, a very key question for people who review books, and the very simple answer to it is the one that I suggest everybody follows. If you review a book and it's a really good rating, by all means tag the author, link into them, share it to your heart's content. If it's a negative review, if it's a book that you didn't get on with, that you had issues with, don't bring it to the author's attention. You can put out the review there, be respectful in your review, but the last thing you should be doing is bringing it to the author's attention. You wouldn't want people doing that to you. Don't do it to the authors. Next up, do I rate books that I DNF or do not finish, or just shove them onto an abandoned shelf on Goodreads or something like that? So first of all, to the second part of the question, I don't actually use shelves on Goodreads other than the typical want to read, read and so forth that are already set up there. I don't create shelves for DNF or for various different categories whatsoever. I do review books that I DNF. I very rarely DNF a book in the first instance, but when I do, I write a review, and again, I try to be respectful and just say I DNF'd this book at a certain percentage, so this review isn't obviously for the entire book, but from what I read, this is what I thought about it, these are the things I liked, these are the things that I didn't like, and if applicable, this is why I chose to put the book down. What I don't do though is provide a rating. So Goodreads is good for that because it does allow me to review a book without rating. But if I DNF a book, I don't review it on places like Amazon because you can't leave a review without leaving a rating. And I think that it is unfair to rate a book if I've not finished the whole book. Next up from Tufty is, what does the family think of my new situation on BookTube with thousands of fans, followers and such like? Well, first of all, I struggle to read it as thousands of fans, but technically it is. I've got over 2,000 subscribers and I like to think that they are fans. The family though, they don't really know about it. My wife and my daughter know about it, but I've not shared it with the rest of the family. I'm not too close with the majority of my family, to be honest anyway. But my wife and my daughter, they're happy with it. They like it. They were a bit kind of amused, I think, or at least my wife was. At first, she thought it was a bit funny, especially because I did actually tell her that I was considering it and kind of talked myself out of it and said, no, I'm never going to do it. And then when I did start up my channel, she was just amused and sort of pointing out to me, oh, you said you'd never do that. My daughter, she loves it. She likes to help me out when I'm taking photos for my thumbnail images. She helps me by taking a photo, and then she'll normally pick up a couple of the books as well and take a couple of photos too. So she likes to say that she's a booktuber as well. So I think that's a good indication overall. Still with Tufty's questions, has my postie commented on the marked increase in book mail deliveries since I started my booktube adventure? His has complained about the weight of some of the parcels he receives. For me, no. Most of the books that I receive, whether they are gifts from other people or books that I've purchased myself online, come through Amazon. So rather than a postie, it's an Amazon delivery person. And of course, they get all things, and some of them are going to be quite large and quite heavy. So no, they a lot of the times as well just leave it in the doorstep anyway, so there's no actual interaction with them. Next up, he asks, have I incurred the wrath of a segment of fandom? And I was going to say no to this, but actually when I was just reviewing the questions a minute ago before filming, I thought yes, actually I have. So this was many years ago. I think it was about 10 or 11 years ago, maybe not quite that long, but I reviewed The Red Knight by Miles Cameron when it came out, and I really didn't like it. I had various issues with it, so I did what I would normally do in that instance. I left a review and I said what I liked and what I didn't like about it, and I posted that review at the time on Reddit in the r/fantasy sub, and people really didn't appreciate that. So I had a few people coming at me saying that I didn't understand the book because I didn't like it, and pointing out where I was wrong in my opinion. So that's probably as close as I've had since then, and apart from that, I would say no, I'm certainly not aware of any wrath of the fandom that I have incurred. So I think I'm doing a good job of that, or if I have, they're doing a good job of keeping me away from it. So that goes back to that question about linking into authors if you're given a negative review, I guess. Next up, am I sat on a stool or other perch when filming? I'm sat on a poof at the moment, so a nice little cushion just to keep me a little bit more comfortable than sitting on the floor, but I am quite low down. This here is the third shelf up from the bottom, so I am quite low, and what I'll do is I'll put up a photo here because before starting filming I took a photo to show my filming setup just before I sat down here. Still on Tufty's questions for the moment, a couple of similar ones. Stiff or floppy books? Floppy, I think, for me. Pristine or broken spines? Pristine, and I try to keep them that way as well. Even with a stiff paperback, I'm actually pretty good at reading that and keeping the spine nice and neat. And brand new or second-hand books, I've nothing against second-hand books, but I very rarely get them. I don't actually have, sadly, a second-hand bookshop that's in a good distance anymore. I used to have one in town, and I did used to purchase quite a few fantasy books from there, but that closed down and there isn't anywhere else, so all of the books I get pretty much are brand new. And the last question from Tufty, what piece of advice would I offer to my younger self if I had the opportunity? Maybe a regret, recommendation, or realisation. This is the sort of question I don't really tend to think about very often, and I guess maybe it's not the thing that anyone really thinks about until they're specifically asked it. But I would say probably for me, be braver, take more risks. I'm an introvert, and I think that kind of plays into it a little bit. I'm quite risk averse, but sometimes you do need to take the risk and jump out of your comfort zone. I've done that with the channel. It's definitely still, but certainly when I started up the channel, it was well outside of my comfort zone. But I've done it, I've taken the risk, and I've jumped outside my comfort zone, and I'm just running with it still, and I'm having a good time. Moving on, and the next couple of questions are from Maria, from the channel Maria Might Read That. First one is, has there ever been a moment when I considered quitting BookTube? No, and what are you trying to tell me here? I don't think there has, though. There's always times when it's a lot of work and there's a lot of planning and preparation that you need to put into it, but no, I don't think I've ever considered quitting, which I think is pretty good going, really. And her next question was, what's my reading snack of choice? And I don't have one. I don't generally snack when I'm reading, or specifically because I'm reading at least. Normally I read in bed or in the bath, so that's not really conducive to having a snack whilst I'm doing it anyway. Next question from Bill Smiley. Which lesser known fantasy series would I consider really good? That is a really difficult one, because I did have some lesser known series that I really rated, and they've both really started to get a lot of attention. One of them is these guys, The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne, which I read when they first came out, but in this community at least, they are absolutely massive now, I would say. And the other one is Shadows of the Apt by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which again is really starting to grow and have more people talking about it in the last year or so. So I think probably where I would go with this is into self-publishing, and the one that I will go with is the Kreidic Sagas by Alicia Wanstall-Burke. I really enjoyed this. It's a series that really grew on me and really grew within itself, in my opinion, with each book getting noticeably better as the series went on. That series is now complete, that trilogy, so do go and check it out. And if you want to hear more about the Kreidic Sagas, Alicia Wanstall-Burke had a guest spot on my August indie showcase, so go and hear her talking about the series in her own words. Next question is from Shaggy Shepherd. If I could pick any book to get a special edition made of it and take a trip to have it personalised and signed by the author, what book would it be? I really don't know about this one. I'm quite not necessarily picky. I don't know if it's the opposite of picky, I'm not sure, but I'm not massive on special editions. I think part of it is because we've had so many special editions, they're just being churned out like nobody's business at the moment. You can have a brand new book, even by a debut author, and on the day of release there's 2 or 3 different places already doing special editions of it, and they're so expensive, and it doesn't really do it for me. Most of the time as well, special edition, it's just some sprayed edges which do nothing for me. I mean, how many edges can you see on the bookshelf behind me? None, because I show the spines of my books. So sprayed edges and a lot of the things that they do for special editions just don't work for me. I can't think of a series that I've got off the top of my head that I would do that. Maybe if I had to choose an answer, I would go with The Iron Crown, which might potentially have something in the works, at least for a hardback, but I'll go with that by author L.L. McRae. Next question is from Terry. What book series do I wish had another book or spin-off so I can enjoy the world some more? This one I'm going to go with Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shadows of the Apt. This one, there are already kind of spin-offs or additional books to it. There are short story collections, I think there's 4 of those, set in the world of the Insect Kingdom, but I would like to see another series, another trilogy or something along those lines, where you can get really involved with a new set of characters, a new storyline, but in the same world, because I really love that world. I think it's really, really interesting. Next up, I've got a couple of questions from Kayla from Kay's Hidden Shelf. If I could hang out with any character from a book, who would it be? I really don't know about this one. I kind of struggle with these kind of questions, and I really don't know why. I will go with the Companions of the Hall from R.A. Salvatore's Forgotten Realms series, so Drizzt and Bruna and Catti Bree and Wolfgar. and I think it could just be really fun. I really enjoy the camaraderie between those people. They've been together for such a long time, they know each other really well, and I think it could be just a really fun time. Who would be on my warband? Heroes and Villains Welcome. Again, very similar. I really struggle with this one. So I'll go with just a bunch of warriors, because there's no stipulation on the setup of a warband. It doesn't have to be one of each type of character class or anything along those lines. So I'll go with Drizzt Do'Urden from the Companions of the Hall that I've just mentioned, Corbin from the Faithful and Fallen, Druss from David Gemmell's Legend, and then moving away from fantasy, Ahsoka Tano, because I think she's just really cool and a complete kick-ass character, and she'll give an element of a sort of magic as well. And there's no one else who's really jumping out at me. I should probably have put a bit more time into that one, but on the spot it's a really difficult one for me to answer, so I'm going to move on. Do I have a bookish pet peeve, and if so, what is it? Kind of, but it's very dependent. So I like to take really good care of my books. So when anyone is doing the opposite, throwing books around, damaging them deliberately, turning the pages, dog-earing them, whatever you want to call it, if it's your book and you do that to your own book, that's fine. I don't necessarily like to see it, but it's up to you because it's your property. But that's probably the one main thing that really is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. And then Kay's last question, certainly for the moment: would I want to run away from author A.R. Witham as an Ent, or Tiago Abdallah as a Thousand Ants? And she's asked me that because I asked her the same question, and I think it would have to go with the 1,000 ant size Tiago Abdallahs, because I'm a lot bigger, so I can get away from them and put some distance between us, and maybe if I get tired of running away and they catch me up, I can stamp on them. Next up is a question from Bridget. How did I get started editing books? So technically I haven't got started editing books. I do proofreading, which is slightly different. It's more at the tail end of the process. So how I got into it though, I was working and we had this pandemic that everyone's aware of, and so I was spending a lot of time working from home and I wasn't having a good time in the office. There were various things that I don't need to get into here, but I really didn't want to go back to work with some of the people that I was working with and have some of the atmosphere that I was working in. So it's something that I wanted to do for quite some time anyway. I did look at it previously and decide not to, but because I was working from home and because I was making this decision, I decided to look around, and I did a course, a proofreading course, and managed to get myself some work on the back of that, and I've just been going along since then, picking up various little jobs as a freelance proofreader and moving from there. So one of the things that's happened to me recently, which is absolutely amazing because it combines what I do for fun and what I do for a living, I reviewed a book, and then the publisher of that book contacted me because they'd seen in my bio on Twitter or Instagram, I forget which it was, that I'm a proofreader, and they said, if you're looking for work, because your reviews are so analytical and detailed, we'd quite like to work with you as a proofreader. So I'm currently doing a test for them to potentially proofread some books from a well-known publisher, which is absolutely amazing for me. Next up, author L.L. McRae asks me, do I have a favourite dragon in any media, or a top 3? And not really. I do love dragons, first of all, but I find that I've not been reading too many dragons recently, or if I'm reading them or watching a show with dragons, a lot of the time it's just a dragon as a beast rather than kind of a named character. For this one, I'll go with Valeris from Ryan Carhill's The Bound and the Broken series, because that's one which I can really count as a character and that I enjoy the books and also the character of that dragon itself. She also asks, what is my all-time favourite meal? And for that one, I would say a nice homemade lasagna with some garlic bread and a nice glass of red wine. Book Reading Billy asks, what's the biggest lesson I've learnt since starting my YouTube channel? I think for that one, I would probably say to do some planning. So one of the things that I didn't do when I set out my channel is have a good plan of kind of what I was going to do week on week or video on video. I've started to do that in the last few months, and it's definitely really helpful, and it allows me to see where I've got a bit of a gap where I need to fill something in based on my video schedule. So I know that I need to have a book review for that spot, for instance. So I think definitely having a plan and also sticking to it, but also to try and get ahead of that plan a bit if possible, so that I'm not having to film and edit a video sometimes on the day or sometimes just the day before that video comes out. Chris Mohan now asks, what's the first important book of my life? I don't really think I have books that I would call important to my life. We're just talking about favourite books that I have. I guess perhaps I would go with this one as one of the two books that was my kind of earliest introductions to fantasy. I'll use one in another question later on. So for this one, I'll go with The Lord of the Rings, because it's one of the first books that I can remember reading once I got past kind of the things that you read as a young child. I read that when I was about 10 or 11 years old, or started it at least when I was 10 or 11 years old. So it's basically the earliest book that I can remember reading for myself. Ellen McRae comes back with, what's a book that I wish I could read for the first time? It's very difficult actually for me to answer that one. As somebody who doesn't reread books, I think that's where that comes into it. It makes it difficult for me to answer. I would probably say, rather than a book, the whole series, The Faithful and the Fallen, because it's my favourite series. Malice wasn't the perfect opening to the series. It was really, really good, and obviously got me really excited to carry on with it. But the overall experience, and the reason why it's my favourite series, is because of the combination of all four books in there. So I would probably have to say that one if it's a memory wiped clean sort of situation, and I could go in and read that series for the first time and hopefully read them back to back rather than a year in between them as I did when they were coming out. Next up, George Reads Books asks, at what point did I know my favourite series would be the favourite and why? So again, we're talking about The Faithful and the Fallen. And for that, it was just as I was reading them, really. I guess I'd not really read anything quite like them. Most of the reading that I had done to the point that I was reading those had been more what you would call the classics, Gemmell, Feist, and so forth. And this one was kind of taking the lead from those, especially Gemmell, and modernising it really. And it was my first real experience, I think, of a series or a book doing that. But also, I think as I was reading them, they were just being released and I was interacting with the author. So John Gwynne was probably my first real author interaction. And I think that really helps because I was going back and forth, we were conversing via email and talking about the books and getting excited for the new book as it came out and so forth. So I think that very early set The Faithful and the Fallen as my favourite, and it's remained there since then. Next up, Maury from Book Reading Coffee Drinking asks a few questions. What is the book that I credit with getting me into reading? So this is one where I said I would use two answers. So Lord of the Rings was one, and get me into fantasy reading proper is Blue Moon Rising by Simon R. Green. This is one where we had a mobile library, a van that would come around with a load of books on it basically to our street, and we would go into there every couple of weeks when it turned up and get some books out. I was reading things like Asterix and Obelix at the time, and my mum got Blue Moon Rising, she read it, and then she gave it to me and said, I think you might like this, and she was right, one of the few things I remember her being right about, and I loved it, and I've bought myself a copy of it when it came back into print many years later, and I'm actually looking, despite saying a minute ago I'm not a rereader, I found this on graphic audio recently, so I'm looking forward to listening to it and seeing if it stands up to my memory and seeing how good I think it is now. But that's the one that I would really credit as getting me into fantasy reading, because since I read that one, I think that was really the one that opened the floodgates, and basically 99% of my reading since then as a 12, maybe 13-year-old has been fantasy. Next up, she asks, is there a book I almost gave up on that ended up being a favourite once I finished it? And I don't think so. I said before I don't really DNF books. I've got a very small DNF pile in my kind of reading history. I don't really think there is one, because normally if a book is one that I'm nearly giving up on, I will either give up on it, or if I power through it, I kind of come to resent it because I'm pushing through and continuing reading it. So things like The Red Knight, where I wasn't having a good time with it, but I carried on and reading it to the end. It would have to be incredible at the end and really tie the whole book together, but really work extra hard to bring me up from a real low on it to really enjoying it. So I can't think of anything that's done that for me to answer that one. Kind of a similar or opposite, she then asks, is there a book I put off reading, and then when I finally read it, I wondered why I put it off for so long? Kind of with this one, there's been a few. I'm taking it more in terms of it was really amazing when I read it, so oh my god, why did I wait so long for that, rather than anything else. And I think the one probably for me there would be Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, book 2 of the Stormlight Archive. I read that recently, and yeah, it'd been nearly 10 years in between A Way of Kings and Words of Radiance for me, and I really had a good time reading Words of Radiance, so I guess I was literally thinking to myself, why did I put it off for so long? Next question from Maury. Would I consider writing a book myself one day? Yes, definitely. I have a work in progress that I've been working on for nearly 20 years, maybe more than 20 years actually. I have come to realise that with the time that I have, I'm never actually going to get to it though. I don't have the time to put into the writing, and when I do, I don't write, which is the kind of personal problem with that. That's my doing. But I have all these great ideas that I really love, and I would love to see them on a page. I see them kind of as a movie in my head, but it's just the little scenes that tie them together and the character interactions and some of the things that are really, really important for a good book, like the character growth, that I feel like I would struggle with a bit more. Especially at the time when I do my writing, I'm more focused on those scenes because I can see those in my head, and the other bits I can't really see or I've not put so much thought into, so that really holds me back. But yeah, I would love to get my book out on paper at one point in the future, but I don't really see it happening. Question now from Micah. What are some key elements that I particularly enjoy seeing in a book? Animal companions, epic battle scenes, that kind of thing. And I don't really kind of look for key elements. I look for overall story when I'm trying to decide whether to read a book. I guess though, yeah, the epic battle scenes I do really like. Probably more kind of small scale though for me, rather than big nation against nation war. I like kind of a smaller scale where you can be a bit more almost intimate with the characters as they're going through a battle, and you can really see it through their eyes and things like that. So I really do like to follow a character through the battlefield without it being sort of this massive set piece where every man and his dog's involved. Kareem Solomon asks, where do I get my t-shirts from? And this is one that I genuinely expected, because he has commented on my t-shirts quite a few times. I get them from all over the place, to be honest. My wife and my mother-in-law both kind of have a bit of a habit of buying me a new t-shirt now for Christmas or birthday, so I get a lot from them and don't know where they come from. Some specific t-shirts though. My most recent one I think was a cat dragon sleeping on a pile of books, which my wife bought me from the Emergent Realms merch store. And I've got a series of cat t-shirts where there's a cat as a kraken attacking a boat, a cat looking like Maverick from Top Gun, and a cat looking like Gandalf, and they're all from Amazon, from a store called The Mountain, so they're really, really good quality and comfortable t-shirts. Bit pricey, but I do really love them. I think they're really cool. Tony from An Erudite Adventure now has a bunch of questions. What is the favourite book cover that I own? I've got loads of book covers that I really love. Most of them, I have to say, do come on that shelf just above my head there, the self-published books. So Dragon Mage is definitely one. Spirits of Vengeance I quite like as well. I'll probably go with a trilogy though, or well, it's 3 books at the moment, but the Reborn Empire by Devon Madsen, I just think they look really cool with the different colours. They look great next to each other on the shelf as well. What is my favourite and least favourite description of a book? I don't really have one, certainly not description as I kind of read it, so I'm going to take a bit of liberty with this. For favourite, I'm going to go with kind of a quote really. So this was David Gemmell in Legend, and I'll paraphrase it I guess, but by nature of definition, only the coward is capable of the highest heroism. I just think that is completely accurate, but that's really stayed with me and kind of resonated. And for one that is my least favourite, again, don't really have one, but I'll go with the old typical that everyone loves reading about, where somebody releases a breath that they didn't realise they were holding. What is the video I'm most proud of making? I guess with that one I would go with my first indie author showcase video, because that's been a really great series of videos on my channel, and I'm so thankful to all of the authors who continue to submit videos and continue to show interest in this. I've still got a bunch of authors who have told me that they will be looking to do a video for me at some point when they get round to it, or when their book's coming out, or something along those lines. And yeah, that makes me so proud, because although it's not the biggest kind of series of videos in terms of views, I don't care, because it's not about the views. That's not what I'm doing that or any of my channel for. I'm doing it because I love those videos, and I have people who tell me they love those videos, and I just love spreading the word about these great self-published books that otherwise have a bit of a hard job. I'm loving that there's more and more of these that are doing really well lately, and any little part that I can play in that is great for me. He then asks, if I could have a dragon, what would I name it? I have no idea. Bernie McBurnface. Who would win, a dragon or a griffin, if they were equal in size? I would have to go with a dragon, probably, if anything, because of the ranged weapon. I kind of think of a dragon as being the fire-breathing type, so I will go with that. What is my favourite eye colour? Blue. Marilyn then asks, besides reading, do I have any other hobbies? I'm really boring. Not really. I read. I like to say I write, but realistically I don't anymore. So I read, I watch TV. I go out every couple of weeks with my mate and we play snooker, so I'd probably say that would be my other main hobby. What is my daughter's favourite book? I asked her when this question first kind of popped up a couple of weeks ago, and she reeled off a load of books: the Harry Potter series, the Worst Witch series, Dogman, and there's a similar kind of series with a cat. She's got loads of books that she loves. I asked her again this morning and she narrowed it down, and she's decided that her favourite at the moment is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. That's the last Harry Potter book that she read. She's started reading The Order of the Phoenix, but she reads in these big, really nice illustrated editions, and The Order of the Phoenix doesn't come out until just after her birthday in October. So Harry Potter 4, she says, is her favourite. Okay, moving on. Lana from Law and Lullabies asks a few questions, starting with, what was the first book that got me into reading self-pub? I had to check my records on this one because I really hadn't a clue about it. But I did read a couple of self-pub previously, but the ones that really got me into it, I suppose, in terms of reading lots of it, I read Sword of Kaigan as part of a buddy read on the Wizardly Duo Discord, and then the next book I read after that was Voice of War. So those would be the two really, and then after that, it wasn't because of a big sort of mind-blowing moment or an eye-opener or anything like that. It wasn't a conscious decision. I just happened to start reading a lot more self-pub after reading those two, so they were kind of the ones that opened the floodgates, if you will. As a kid, what did I want to be when I grew up? My earliest kind of dream in that sense, and it seems really bad to think of it as a dream now, but I wanted to be a journalist, probably because I loved reading, and more specifically, I guess, writing at the time at least. After that, I did want to become an author, and again, someday maybe I would still like to, but journalist was my earliest dream, and it seems very odd to me now to want to be a journalist. Am I a pineapple on pizza person? I've nothing against pineapple on a pizza. I don't eat it. My go-to pizza, if I get a takeout, is a meat feast essentially, but I do like now and then a Hawaiian which has pineapple on it. There's nothing wrong with it on the right pizza. What's one piece of advice I would give my younger self? I think I've answered that one earlier on. Take more risks, or don't be afraid of taking risks. If I could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? Again, this is one where I'm quite boring. I'm happy living where I am. I'd like to holiday maybe in various places, but I wouldn't want to live in a different country for various reasons. Part of that is maybe just that comfort zone and risk adverseness, but I'm happy living where I am. Maybe in a different house, maybe in a nicer, bigger house with a lovely library, and that would be a great one for me. If I can have dinner with anyone alive or not, who would it be? Again, I'm not really one for, maybe because I'm an introvert, I don't really do big dinners, or, I don't really have these dreams of meeting my heroes as such, because I wouldn't know what to do with that. So I'll go with my book bestie, Nina, and we'll have a nice little sit down, a nice dinner, and a few drinks, and talk about books. If I were to go into a great and epic battle, what weapon would I use and what would its name be? I have no idea. In the story that I'm writing, my work in progress, although it's not a named weapon, my lead character has kind of a spear sword, so it's essentially a short sword with a nice sort of leaf-edged blade, and the handle of the sword is about as long as the blade. It's kind of a 50-50. I saw this somewhere, some sort of similar design, and I really liked the kind of uniqueness of it. It's not just a boring sword, but it's a bit more of a spear sword, and it does have a historic kind of basis. So there are weapons in history which are similar to this, so it's definitely one which could work and has worked previously. I think for naming it, I can't do that. It's like having a baby. I don't think I could name a baby like Eleanor, my daughter. We named her when we held her, because you need to be able to see and to feel and to have a connection, which forms in some cases, like having a baby, forms straight away, but you need that connection before you can give a name, and I think that's the same for a weapon. Esme Rosaline talking about names. If I had to change my name, what would I change it to? I wouldn't. I'm happy, I'm comfortable with my name, and I can't think that there's a name that I would want to have. So yeah, no idea on that one. Have I ever regretted a video or review I posted? No. I think I can honestly say no. I mean, as far as videos go, yeah, there's videos that really haven't done very well, even if I thought maybe they should have done better than they have, but there's none that I've regretted posting. How did I discover my love of indie or self-pub? So I've kind of answered this one, but to expand on it a little bit, I would say by accident, really. As I said, I read those couple of books and then just started reading more self-pub, just kind of by accident, really. There was no conscious decision for it, as I said. I just randomly started it. And then, of course, with some of them, it's the same as a trad published series. You read a book and then you carry on reading that series. So you're reading more, in this case, self-published books, because you're continuing with a series or other series by the same author. And then you start reading one book and then you start getting recommendations for other self-published books. So it's kind of going down a little rabbit hole, I suppose, in that respect. What is my favourite thing about being a father? Interesting one. I don't really know. I think really just seeing my little girl grow up and become a woman, and she's absolutely hilarious. She's really clever, and she just warms my heart. And I think also kind of some of the things to come in the future. She's already reading some books that I've read, like Harry Potter, for instance. But seeing her read some of the books that are on my bookshelves, I think I'd be really looking forward to. No pressure on her. I'm not going to kind of push them on her, but if she decides that she wants to read in the same genre, that'd be amazing. And the last question from Esme is, because I'm apparently always coming up with ridiculous questions for everyone else, what type of sauce would I choose to bathe in if I had to? I really like toffee sauce, but I don't think that would be good for bathing in because it's a bit too sticky, so I'd go with a nice red wine sauce. Next up, a question from Amanda Nieves. How does my family, wife and kids feel about my YouTube channel? Are they supportive, etc.? I've kind of answered this one previously, but yeah, they kind of think it's funny. Like me, they kind of think it's amazing, especially as I was coming up to 1,000 subscribers. We'd kind of play a game, guess how many subscribers I've got now, and my wife would have a guess, and we'd both be really astounded at the actual number. So yeah, they're supportive. They really like it. It's a hobby, but my wife was one of the first to point out that it is actually also a job, because it does have an impact on what I do for an actual living, which is my proofreading. And I did mention that earlier on, that it had tie-ins there, and it's kind of made connections, or helped me to make connections that have helped me with that. So yeah, very supportive. Follow-up question then from Chad, to add to this, how are they dealing with my fame? And yeah, they just think it's funny, if anything. As I said, my little girl wants to be a YouTube star as well. She's I think the only one who, without being tongue-in-cheek, she has called me famous, and to her, if I'm on TV or I'm on YouTube, therefore I'm on TV, she thinks that makes me famous. So that's kind of nice in a funny little way, I suppose. Question from Terry: are you worried about the water shortages in the UK impacting my book and bath time? No, and if it becomes a problem, I'll just bathe in red wine. Palmer Pickering, the author, asks me, one of the things she likes about watching my videos is listening to my accent. Thank you. As an American, all British accents sound pretty much the same to her, but apparently things are different. There are different accents that mean something to you guys, us guys, on the other side of the pond. So what kind of accent do I have? So yeah, with that one, it's the same anywhere, but to use America as an example, if you're an American, you know all of these different accents, and I don't know the names for them. They all have different names, whether it's just Southern or more local to cities or states and things like that. And you kind of recognise them. You'll hear someone talking about them, and you'll know that it's a person from somewhere or other. It's the same over here, and I imagine for most countries, certainly of any size, it'll be the same. So over here you've got famous ones like Brummie and Scouse and Cockney. For me, I don't think my accent really has a specific name. I just generally tend to refer to it as Northern. So I was born in Cheshire in the northwest of England, and when I was 16 I moved down to Hampshire on the south coast. So it's kind of a mishmash, but most of it is Cheshire. So if anything, I would generally tend to say that I've got a Northern accent, although it's not kind of a thick, strong Northern one, especially not something like a nice Yorkshire accent or something like that. She then asks, if I was to write a fan fiction story about a Game of Thrones character and had to choose between Arya and Melisandre, which would I choose? There's no contest there, it's Arya every day. She's one of my favourite characters in the series anyway, so that kind of makes the decision for me anyway, but I think she's just far more interesting. There's a lot more stories that I would want to read based on her than there would be based on Melisandre. Then, how does one read in a bathtub without getting the pages wet, and how many pages can I read before the water gets cold? So to answer the second one first, I have a hot bath, and normally I'll read for sort of half an hour or so in the bath, and it's still nice and hot before I get out. Part of that is because you insulate it, so I have a nice layer of bubbles which helps to keep the heat in and keep the bath warmer for longer. In terms of getting the pages wet, I used to read physical books in the bath and never had a problem keeping my hands out of the water or anything like that. Because I have a hot bath, condensation would be the only thing, and that's on the covers of the book, so I would always have a little bar towel just to dry it off if it got a little bit too wet with condensation. But reading digitally on the Kindle, which is what I do most of the time in the bath, I have a protective sleeve, so just like a waterproof kind of map carrier, I guess. You can get them specifically for Kindles, but I'll just put it in there and it keeps it nice and safe. So although they're digital pages, there's no danger of them getting wet. Still with Palmer, she asks me, can I walk on my hands? Not that I'm aware of, I've never tried it. And would I win an axe throwing competition? I guess it depends on who it was against. I've not got the strongest of arms, so I think I would tire quite quickly, but yeah, I'd maybe like to try axe throwing at some point and see if I can answer that question. Getting towards the end of them now, George Read Books asks, my favourite thing about having the BookTube channel and Discord server. I've kind of answered this over a realm of questions, but I think just the interaction with everyone, the friends that I've made and the conversations we have, and the way that it's helped me to find new authors and new books, but also the way that it's helped me to somehow progress my career as well. It's linked in with what I do as a living, so loads of things, but the key overriding thing that ties all of that together and allows those things to happen is the people. So it's you guys, basically. Craig then asks, if I could go back to when I started my channel, what piece of advice would I give myself? I've kind of answered this one again, but planning ahead and making sure that I've got everything that's needed, but not only for the next video or the current video that I'm filming, but also what am I going to do in the next handful of videos going forwards. Shaggy Shepherd asks, what is my favourite bath soap, bath drink? Do I match them to the book I'm reading? So in general, no, I don't drink in the bath, so I don't have that one. Do I match them to the book? Again, going back to the snacks, my reading snacks, I'll have a drink just because I'm having a drink. So whether it's a red wine, a whiskey, water, I will do that just because I'm having that anyway. It won't be related to having a book at all. I don't get that. I see that a few times. Pairing, it's like your foods, isn't it? But pairing a drink or a food to a book, that sort of idea doesn't compute to me. They're just two completely unrelated things, essentially. So no, I don't pair them. The bath soap, I don't really have one. I use Radox for creating bubbles in my bath, so that's the key thing as far as having a bath goes for me. AC Cross then follows up with, based on that question, do I drink my bath soap? No, I do not. What sort of an animal are you? Nina asks, do I have a favourite rubber duck? I only have one rubber duck there, and Nina bought that one for me, so she's just making sure that it's my favourite. And to finish off, a couple of questions again from Tony from An Erudite Adventure. What's my favourite meme? I don't have one. I don't really like memes. I don't. It's not that I don't get them, but I don't get the humour in them. I don't find most of them funny, and especially because you see them over and over, and they really just lose any humour that they did have for me. We did have a competition on Ryan Carhill's Discord server a while ago, and to enter the competition you had to create a meme based on one of his books, and I did that to enter the competition, but I kind of felt dirty doing so. So no, I don't have a favourite meme. And the last one from Tony, what's the strangest question from the Question of the Day channel in my Discord server? And admittedly, I've just read the question. I thought initially it was from the bunch of questions that I've had asked, and I was thinking, I really don't know. But we have a channel in my Discord server, normally run by Terry, and it's Question of the Day, and people come in and answer, and it's just for a bit of interaction and getting to know you and that kind of thing. As far as strange questions in there go, I really don't know. A lot of them are kind of genuine questions, sort of nice, interesting questions, book recommendations, type of person you are and that kind of thing. So there's not been a vast number of strange ones, and I certainly can't think of one off the top of my head. So that is it. That is a big breath, and in fact, let's take one of these. That's on the floor, so to go back to an earlier question, that's how low down I am at the moment. But thank you so much to everyone who has asked me questions and made me run out of breath a little bit answering them. I hope it was interesting to you. I hope that you got some good answers to questions that you never knew you actually wanted to know. Once again, thank you so much to everyone who has contributed, not only questions, but contributed to the growth of this channel by subscribing, by liking, commenting, following me on other social media. Links are in the description box down below this video as always, but especially to the lovely group of people who've joined my Discord and have that everyday community with me, and the smaller group of people who have joined my Patreon and helped support the channel going forwards. I couldn't do this without all of you, but especially that great group of people. Thank you so much. In terms of giving back, I can't forget, but there's a competition here as well, or a giveaway, to win a book to the value or equivalent value in your currency of £20 sterling. So before this video, I ran the results. There were about 70 individuals, a few duplicates because you could get additional entries for different things, but there are about 70 names that went into the generator, and I ran that just before I came out to film, and the winner was, which I will show the draw in the space here to the side of me, the winner was, I think it came up as Squidge, which is the Discord name of author L.L. McRae. So congratulations, Lauren. I'll be contacting you, or you can contact me if you see this before I get to you, to talk about which book you would like to magically turn up on your doorstep. Thank you so much for your time today, everyone. I hope, as I say, that this was interesting, and I hope that it hasn't turned out too long. I have no idea how long I've been sat here, let alone how long this will be when it's all stitched together from the individual clips that I have to film in. But there we go. It'll be shorter if I stop rambling, so I'll do that now. Do the usual liking and subscribing stuff, checking out all the links in the description box below, including for my book club Discord and my Patreon. Would love to have you in the conversation if you wanted to join in one or both of those. I'll hopefully see you all in the next video sometime soon, but until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.